This is TWiT.
Big story, and I did not know this at the time, but a fella in Australia, and it was covered in Daring Fireball and Apple Insider. Michael Sy has written about it. The Register's written about it. Paris is the name. And I think an Apple developer who has created some interesting Apple sites for developers. He says, I don't know. I don't want to gender him. I think it's a he.
It's he. Yeah. Paris Butfield Addison.
Okay.
And
he says, I'm writing this as a desperate measure after, this is his blog post, after nearly 30 years as a loyal customer, authoring technical books on Apple's own programming languages, Objective-C and Swift, spending tens upon tens of thousands of dollars on devices, apps, conferences, and services. I think most of us would say that's us. I've been locked out of my personal and professional digital life with no explanation and no recourse. And how did it happen? He bought a gift card at a major Australian retailer. He doesn't say the name, but he says, think Walmart, for those of you in the United States. The code from the gift card could not be redeemed. It was a $500 Apple gift card. He was going to use it to pay for his iCloud storage plan. The code failed. Shortly after my account was locked, he's been on the horn with Apple support like crazy. And they say, well, you can create a new account.
Yeah.
But that's not going to do it because all of his apps, all of his music, everything.
Yeah. And his devices presumably are locked to that Apple ID, right?
And that's part of his complaint, that none of these actual devices are unusable because I'm logged out of all my accounts. It won't. It's devastating, like what this error has had. And what frustrates the hell out of anybody who reads this is that you just recognize that. You recognize that, oh, well, we're not going to tell you what's wrong. No, and no, we didn't approach you to say, hey, there's a problem. What can we collect some information for you before we decide to absolutely torch your entire existence in the Apple ecosystem that you built for the past 10 or 15 or 20 years? No. And well, now that you've done it, will you explain why? No, we won't. And
please, I know people at Apple are listening. If you have any sway, please do something for Paris.
Paris has been, what's interesting here is, for people who don't know, sometimes when a high-profile person has a problem with Apple and they start yelling about it publicly, very frequently they are contacted by a mysterious group inside Apple called Executive Relations.
Yeah.
These are the same people who, like, if you send a heartwarming message to Tim, they may get back to you with a heartwarming response from Tim or something. But they are also the tactical team to suppress really bad stories by solving the problems. And they swoop in. They have swooped in this, and so far, Paris says no response, no resolution.
He knew this. He asked for the executive team.
Which is amazing because the executive relations group, this is the group that fixes this stuff so that these things go away. And that's why I still believe that this will get resolved. If it doesn't get resolved, things are really, really bad, because this is the case of somebody who has a receipt from the retailer. The card was legitimately purchased. It wasn't like a fake on eBay. It might have been a fake put up at the store. But again, to go from fraud detection to locking an account, I get it. Apple locks accounts all the time for lots of reasons. I have a friend whose account gets locked all the time. He doesn't even know why. Just somebody is trying to log in and things are weird and they lock his account and he has to call Apple. The problem is what happens then, because what Paris did was fell in a hole. Like this is, I think, the consequence of Apple growing so fast that a lot of their systems have just not grown commensurately to deal with issues like this. And like Apple has invested so much in tying all our devices to our Apple IDs that this is a death sentence for your devices. You're going to lose all your photos. You're going to lose all your music. You're going to lose all your movies and TV shows that you bought. You may not be able to use your devices anymore. There has to be a process, and it has to have some level of transparency. And the scary thing here is not that Paris is going through this, believe it or not, because the executive relations team has been in touch. The scary thing is if you're not a high-profile person who wrote a bunch of O'Reilly books about Apple and has a blog and knows people, this could happen to you too, and there's no recourse.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale for all of us. It's not just Apple, it's Google. Paul Thurrott went through something similar with Google, almost lost a whole bunch of stuff because Google canceled his account, including his YouTube account. It's true with Amazon. It's true with Microsoft. It's one of the reasons I went out after reading Paris's story and bought a ThinkPad, which I'm going to put Linux on. I wish I could buy a phone that wasn't owned by big tech. I moved all of my books off of Audible. I moved all of my music off of Apple. This is a cautionary tale for all of us. Think about what would your life be like if you lost your account with one of these big tech companies. Remember, they're so big now. There's no, I remember I had somebody call the radio show who her Gmail account had been, same thing, summarily terminated. She said, so I found the Google office in Irvine and I went down and I knocked on the door. Nobody answered. There's nobody inside. She said, what do I do? I've heard these stories for years. This brings it home. If you don't have a way of getting, this is why Google Takeout is so important. You mentioned that earlier, Jason. If you don't have a way of getting your data out of there, get it out now while those accounts are live. And I think we all need to start thinking about ways to not be so locked into these big tech companies. I think Linux is a very good choice. It's sad there is really no, I looked at the Fairphone. There really isn't a good choice.
Yeah.
On the phones. I have a Pixel, my old Pixel 9. I'm going to put Graphene OS on it. That's the closest you can get to a de-Googled version of Android, and it's secure. I think we should all be aware of this and be prepared for this, because this is not good.
Yeah, prepared. You said prepared. I was going to say you sound a little like a prepper, so that works. But I would say,
but I'm terrified this could happen to me.
So for people who are in the Apple ecosystem, what I would say is, if you've got iCloud Photos, make sure you've got a Mac somewhere, the hard drive big enough, and you're syncing all files locally so that if something happens to your iCloud Photos, you have all the photos. That's a number one. If you're renting or if you're buying movies and TV, consider that you kind of got a license for it and they could kill it at any moment. And if it's something that you really love, maybe you can get it on Blu-ray or DVD or something instead. That I think protecting yourself from the worst of this is the thing that people who are invested in Apple platforms should do at the very least. And photos is the big one, because photos are irreplaceable. Like there's a setting on Mac that says download all of them locally. And if your drive isn't big enough, get an external drive and put your photos library on it. But do that, because that's the big one to me. It would be terrible if you had to buy your apps again. Absolutely. And if you lost all those movie purchases that you made. Although, by the way, Movies Anywhere is a service that syncs your movie purchases between Apple and Amazon and elsewhere, that you can do. That might be a way to do some of this too. And your DVD purchases, just right, because for a lot of people, getting a Linux computer and a phone that isn't tied in is not realistic, even if it would maybe protect you. But you can take some steps so that not all your eggs are not in your Apple ID.
Yeah, remember we've forgotten the trifecta of backups, that you're supposed to have 3 copies of everything that's important enough for you to keep, and one of them should be offsite and another of them should be on a different form of media than the rest. Otherwise, it's not truly backed up. The thing is, cloud syncing works so well, and it's saved your bacon so many times that you kind of forget that, there's still one point of disappearance there. And so the thing is, like, you can get a terabyte SSD for not a whole lot. And for a lot of people, their libraries are actually, you can get for less than $100 enough storage probably to back up your entire cloud library. And I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, and you're going to anger the other people in your family who don't understand that. Why can I no longer stream at 4K like over the past days? Yeah, that's because I'm basically moving half a terabyte or 3/4 of a terabyte off of the cloud and onto here, because otherwise, again, it's just gone. And the thing is, this actually ties into what we were talking about earlier about regulation, that when you give a company like Google or a company like Apple responsibility for policing against pirated content, pirated streamers, accounts that are being used for malicious things, you are basically telling them that our default position should be kill the suspected account immediately and make it incredibly hard for anybody to get it back again. Make someone actually have to sue us before we will restore this account, because that is the safest way for us to be in compliance with this regulation. If we are tentative about it, and if we, why should we hire other people and spend a lot more money to really, really verify that this account is actually being used for piracy, for instance? Well, it's just a lot simpler and cheaper for us to simply Zorch it, and then whoever has that account is just going to have to deal with it. It's a huge, huge problem. I mean, I have Dropbox, I have iCloud, and I have Google Drive. And I really have to set myself a twice-a-year reminder to say that make sure you pack a lunch, get all that off that thing, and have a local copy of it, because otherwise, it's the difference between Paris's problem, which is that 20 years worth of stuff is destroyed, and getting it back again is going to rely on the good graces and the intervention of PR, and saying, damn, that's annoying. It's a good thing I have that 10 terabyte hard drive that I spent $200 for that has a complete backup, but boy, what a pain in the butt. Grr, and then move on with your life.
The black box is the thing that I think is the most disturbing. And again, it's Apple culture, and it's also, I think, a vestige of an earlier time when Apple was not responsible for, like, it's over time, the Apple ID has grown and grown and grown and grown in terms of connecting all of your data and your devices together. And the rest of the support system just hasn't really. And the black box nature of it is the other problem, is so not only is support sometimes seems overwhelmed and under powered to do anything, but there's no clarity about where you are in the process. At least developers who have their apps rejected know that they have an appeal process, and it's internal, but there is an appeal to somebody else. And that's a frustrating black box process. But it's consumers. Like, I'm not saying that the EU needs to do a rights of consumers thing that creates a whole weird Apple court structure or something for support issues, but Apple should be trying to get ahead of this. And if there is not an organizational will, and there isn't somebody leading the charge here, there needs to be. There needs to be somebody who looks at this and says, this shows that our process is broken, and our fraud detection is having adverse impacts that are just exposing how bad we are at taking care of customers like this, where they have no idea what's going on. Because it's very hard to believe that that Paris is at fault, right? Paris got a bad gift card, almost certainly, but got it from a legitimate retailer. Like, there needs to be a process to say, we get it, your track record is perfectly clean. We're sorry that this happened. We can't honor the gift card, but we'll turn your account back on because we know that this is a one-off or whatever. And if it keeps happening, then it's a different story. Yeah. But to do that, you have to communicate. Apple doesn't ever want to communicate. They don't want to talk about their processes. They don't want anything out in the open, because part of their culture, from Steve Jobs especially, is don't let anybody see anything that happens on the inside. Don't tell anybody anything unless you absolutely have to. And that attitude is kind of toxic. And if you're a company that prides yourself in good customer service, you can't have it. So I hope that the end result of this is not just that Paris gets his account back, but somebody at Apple says, why did this happen? Some executive, maybe even Tim Cook, and says, don't let this happen again. Fix this, because they need to fix it.
Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this highlight from MacBreak Weekly. If you want to see the whole show, we're every Tuesday. You can watch us live right here on YouTube, or just click the link below and download an episode, or subscribe if you really like it. What is it the kids say? Oh yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.